Hey guys, welcome to Bible365 with Kathy Carter. Today is 74 of our reading. So we are on day 74 and we're going through the 1 year chronological Bible reading plan. And today our reading is in Numbers 6 through 9. And so if you have never watched these videos before, if this is the first time you've ever been on these videos, I would love for you to listen. Of course, my main goal in this is having you read all of your chapters before you come and listen, so you guys have a little bit of a grasp on what's happening. And maybe this is just a little bit extra. This can help you along a little bit, or maybe just getting a different perspective than the perspective that you already have. But so today would be Numbers 6 through 9. If you have never seen any of these before, after you watch this video, I would love if you go all the way back to the beginning, going back to Genesis 1 and reading it from the beginning, because this is in chronological order, which means this is historically what happened to the world, what happened to God, what happened to God's people. And so it's really to try and get a better grasp on who God is, who we are, and why any of it matters. And so today we're again in the book of Deuteronomy. And so we've finished a handful of other books. And so we have met Moses. We are with Moses and all of his people. Moses saved these people out of Egypt. And once they moved out of Egypt, they went to the base of Mount Sinai. God spoke to them on the mountain, gave them the 10 Commandments. Once he gave them the 10 Commandments, they went to the land of Canaan. They wouldn't go in the land of Canaan because they were scared. Then God turned them around, punished a whole generation of people. About 40 years later, they wandered all through the desert, and that generation died out. Now they are again right outside the land of Canaan, which is a land that God has promised to them. And Moses is about to die. And so he's passing the torch on to his predecessor, which is going to be Joshua. And so Joshua is working with Aaron's son, because Aaron has also died. And so he's working with Aaron's son. Aaron's son is the priest. It's Eleazar. So he's the high priest that speaks directly to God in the tent of meeting, or in the tabernacle. And so they're working together to lead the Israelite people. But before they go into the land of Canaan, Moses is reminding all of these people of everything that has happened from the day they set out from the land of Egypt. And so he's reminding them for a lot of reasons. One reason is because when we forget, we start not worshiping God. So we forget what God has done for us. And so that leads us to really poor worship, because if you forget all that God has done, then you don't realize his greatness. And when you don't realize his greatness, then you forget to, then like you start thinking of yourself sort of bigger, and forget how big God is and everything that God has done for you. And that just really leads to a less of either a recognition of who God is, or a stopping to care about who God is, or even sometimes falling into unbelief and not believing that there's a God at all. So this is a reminder to him. God has told him to remind his people, and then for those people to continue to remind their children. So here we are in Deuteronomy 6, and a lot of this is repeating, because again, he's reminding them of what already happened. So we saw a lot of this in Leviticus and Numbers. And so a lot of this is just a repetition, but there's definitely some verses in there which I think are really fascinating. And so if we just start out with verse 1, he's preparing them, their hearts, to hear some of the things that's happening. So if we go into verse 1 in chapter 6, it says, "These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you, to observe the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess." So remember, they're going to go over and they're going to possess this land. "So that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you." So what I notice in these is decrees, laws, and commands. So there's three different things that he notes in there. And now, in a passing glance, they kind of all seem exactly the same, right? So a decree is a law, which is a command, right? Because a command is something he tells you to do, which is a law, which is a decree. But they're all slightly different. And it could be important as we go on to kind of discuss some of the subtle differences. So a command is authoritative order. So like somebody over authority over you, it might not be a law, but somebody in authority over you tells you a thing to do. And you're to do that thing because the person that has authority over you tells you this thing to do. So that is a command. A decree is an official order. So it would be something that would be written down that, everyone has to follow, right? And so that would be, it would make it official, because it would make it a I want to say a law, but that's not really a law. It's a decree. And then the law is something that the entire community has to do. So this is an overarching community ruling that the community needs to follow for generations. So again, very similar. They kind of enmesh and they cross a little bit into each other, but there are some subtle differences when we see that. And so uh, this is the things that they have to do to remain in community, to remain in fellowship with God, to because of their faith, this is what they've been called to do, right? So if they believe in the Lord, they've been called to do these things. So in that next little section, which is 4 to 9, it says, uh, sorry, 4 to 9 down here. It says, "Hear, O Israel, and be grateful," right? So the land is flowing with milk and honey. And then hear that the Lord God, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. And these commandments I give to you are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. So we are, and again, this is, I know this has been stated before, but we are to love God with everything that we have. And one of the things that he shows them later is that he's checking their hearts, right? So we can do a lot of stuff on the outside. It's always on the inside what matters. So this doesn't matter as much, right? It's everything bubbles up and boils from the inside. So when the inside is not turned towards God, our affections are for something else, then we are on the wrong path. And so he always wants to continue to teach the people to love God with everything in their being. And then we move on. This I find really interesting. So this is verse 10. And it says, "When the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." So remember, way back when in Genesis, he promised Abraham that he would give him this land, a land with large, flourishing cities that you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of good things you did not provide, wells you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. He's letting them know, and this I think is something that's really important, and I feel like this stands the test of time. He has picked them up out of slavery, right? So for 400 years they were in the land of Goshen, 400 give or take. They were in the land of Goshen, and they were building for Egypt. They did nothing in the land of Canaan. So they didn't fight a war. They didn't build a city. They didn't plant a vineyard. They didn't. They're not protecting anybody in that land, and so they have done absolutely nothing. This land is a beautiful land. It's got, if you'll remember from last time, it's got fruit. Remember, they had grapes in there and pomegranates and figs. So it's this land flowing with milk and honey. Again, an expression that means it kind of has anything and everything that they would want in it. It's got mountains, it's got valleys, it's got water. It's right. It's so the fish would be provided, meat is provided. They have anything and everything they need in this land. On top of it, right? That's just the land. On top of the fact that they already have houses there, they already have wells that are dug, so to provide them drinking water. They already have fortified cities, so they would be protected once they're in there. So these are all things that just by the effort of them walking into this land, they're going to have those things. And somebody else built them for this people group. So I'm saying this because this is a gift to this people group that they did not earn. God said, I love this people. I'm going to take this people, pick them up out, and because of nothing that they did, I'm going to put them into a land that they don't deserve because they didn't do anything for it. So the imagery, right? Well, the literalness here is that he literally does that, right? He picks them up out of a land that they did nothing for, and he gives them a land that they did nothing to earn, so to speak, right? So it's literal here, a reminder for those of us who follow God that we are always given stuff that we don't earn. Sometimes you work really, really hard and you don't get something. Sometimes you work really, really hard and you get more than what you've worked for, right? So we have this idea, and especially, I'm going to say especially in America, but maybe especially first world nations, right? We definitely have this idea that that everything I've earned belongs to me because I'm just a really hard worker. And that's not necessarily true. The gifts that you have been given have all been provided by God. For one way or another, one shape or form, they have all been provided by God. Whether it's the brain that you have that works in a certain way, whether it's the neighborhood in which you live that you've been provided certain things to enable you to be able to go to maybe a really amazing college, right? Whether it's the school that you live in, the teachers that were provided for you, whatever it may be, there is a system in place in which, again, I've said on many times that the buck stops at God. God is the final authority and the final say. So all gifts come from him. Now, that's the positive side, right? So some of you are probably going to listen to this and be like, yeah, but then everything bad comes from him as well, right? So if all good comes from him, all bad comes from him as well. And there is definitely truth to that, right? So I don't want to take away from that. What he's saying here, and this is important, what he's saying here is follow him, right? So he's later we see, and I want to move to it, but not too quickly. But later we see part of the reason he takes these people out of the land that they built is that they didn't love him. They hated God, right? And God is the ultimate authority. God is the one who created all things. God is the one who makes the world work in the way it does to um, provides the DNA for you to be in the place in which you're in physically, emotionally, mentally, right? All of those things. So these are all gifts from God. And no matter the smallest gift, the manna that they had that they hated so much because it was the same stuff they had every day was a gift that they did not earn that was directly from heaven. And so, as little as it was enough for them to eat that day. And that was to be thankful for. So, I think every small little bit we should be thankful for and recognizing that it is a gift from God. Okay, so it's a gift that we didn't earn and that we don't deserve. Even when we work, it's a gift that we didn't earn and that we don't deserve. All right. So, and then in that, because of that, we're supposed to fear God and we're supposed to love God and we're supposed to honor God and we're supposed to teach all of these things to our children over and over again to remind them of who God is. So when they get amazing grades, Lord, thank you so much for providing the intellect, the teachers, and the school that they're in. Right. So any of those things, it's a being thankful to God for those things. And then I want to read verse 20 and following because, I just want to read 25 actually. So it says, and if we're careful to obey all this law before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us, that will be our righteousness. Our righteousness, the Israelites' righteousness, take it away from me, the Israelites' righteousness is in performing all of these things with all of their heart, with all of their soul, and with all of their strength. So it's not just an outward appearance. It's not just saying certain things. It's not just looking really good, but their righteousness stems from everything that's inside their heart and the way that they love God. That is what is given to them as an Israelite people. All right, so let's move on to Deuteronomy 7. Reading that first verse. When the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering to possess and drives out before you many nations, passing over who all they are, and when the Lord your God has delivered them over to you and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally. And the reason I want to go over this one, the thing that interested me in this is this expression of destroy them totally. This is sometimes I kind of throw these little things in there because I think it really helps us understand certain things. Destroy them totally. If I were to just read that and I would end with that verse, right? You're going to go in there and you're going to destroy them totally. What I would think is I would wipe them out completely, right? What other thing does destroy them totally mean, right? Take out probably mass genocide, right? Kill every single one of them, every man, every child, every woman, right? So massively destroy all of them. Because I feel like that's what it says. However, if we read those verses following, which I think is part of the important part in there, it says, "Make no treaty with them, show them no mercy, do not intermarry with them, do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons, because they're going to turn your children away from them." If that was mass genocide, you couldn't possibly marry their daughters. You couldn't marry their sons. You couldn't intermarry. You couldn't, you wouldn't be tempted to honor their gods because they would all be dead and destroyed. So destruction, it seems, is really just, they're going to now live. The Israelites will now live in this land. These people, and I'm sure, but don't mishear me. I know people are going to die. It's war. They're going to take over the land and people are going to die. But it's not going to be destroying every single person in the entire nation, because they will continue to go on. And what they do want, what God does want them to do, is this is what you are to do, is to break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their idols in the fire, because you are holy to the Lord. So anything that is unholy to the Lord, they're going to massively destroy all of those things. And it's going to be all about worshiping the one true God. So again, it was just a matter of, sometimes I'm really against cherry picking verses. And this would be one where someone would go, oh, well, God says to destroy all these people. And that's not necessarily the whole truth, right? So we just want to be careful of all those things. And I just find it really interesting. So instead of destroying everybody, we're warned there's still going to be these people there. Don't intermarry with them, because the Lord your God is holy, and you want to remain holy and separate. The Israelites, again, remain holy and separate apart from the rest of the world. All right. So moving on to verse 7. Again, so it says, the Lord did not set his affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other people, for you were the fewest of all people. This is why God does amazing things. God takes the least of those, right? They were slaves. They couldn't talk about not making anything for themselves. They couldn't do anything for themselves. They were completely enslaved by the Egyptian people. So it's not even like they left the land and created a new society or anything like that. They were completely enslaved. They were taken over. They were nobodies, right? So they were the smallest of the small, and God plucked them out, and now he's going to give them into this amazing land, right? This is what God does for people. The high and the mighty and the prideful, those are not the ones that he lifts up. He lifts up the humble. He lifts up the broken. He lifts up the less than, right? So there's power in leaning on God and recognizing that you are the humble, the less than, right? Because we really are. And so we shouldn't be taking these positions of pride, strength, and power and pretending like everything is on us. God is the one that does the work, and God does the work with the least of these. He has always been known for that, and he will continue to be known for that. Because then it says, so in verse 10, it says, but those who hate him, so this again is about the people that live in there, those who hate him will repay to their face by destruction. He will not be slow to repay to their face those who hate him. And so one of the reasons these, again, talking about fair, not fair, the Egyptians are honoring God. He has separated them, made them his special people, and now he is giving them an amazing land. The people who live in that land do not honor God. They hate him. They turn away from him. And so he is taking them out of that land. There is a price to be paid when you don't follow God. And so anytime we're kind of sharing, those of us who believe, we're kind of sharing, I think for us, there's a recognition that there's a price to be paid. And we want people to recognize who God is, right? We want people to revel in the blessings of God and all that he has to offer. And it's not because he's a vicious God who hates people and wants to punish them and kill them. It's because he's a good God, and following him is the ultimate to life, and not following him is death. So that's why we follow. All right, I want to move on to Deuteronomy 8. So I want to move on to that next chapter. And let's just start in verse 1. Be careful to follow every command I'm giving you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land the Lord has promised an oath to your ancestors. So remember, here we go. Remember so that. Verse 2, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years. Sorry, I had to flip my page. All the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. So all that stuff that they went through in the wilderness, all of that mumbling and groaning, he weeded those people out because those people were not turned towards God's heart. He humbled those who were in there and allowed them to serve him and love him more. And then he's bringing them into the promised land. So this was there's a growing that has to happen here in all of us. So in all of us who believe, when we come to him, we're sort of young and childish in the ways. And then the more that we grow and understand who he is, the more mature we get. And hopefully, prayerfully, the more humble we get in spirit when we kind of see exactly who he is. All right. And so I'm just going to move on to 20 because I'm sorry, to Deuteronomy 9. I don't know where I got 20 from, but Deuteronomy 9. So I want to move on to there because he moves on to, he tells them all of the things that he does, right? He just reminds them, this is, I brought you out of slavery. I did all these things for you. And then we move right on to 9 verse 1, it says, "Hear Israel." So he keeps telling them to listen. And this is Moses. "You're now about to cross the Jordan to go in and dispossess nations greater and stronger than you, with large cities that have walls up to the sky. The people are strong and tall. Anakites. You know about them, have heard it said, who can stand up against the Anakites? But God is going to do the work for you." That's my addition. God is going to do the work for you. Do not forget that God is going to do the work for you. He did this already for you. And then he says, "The Lord is giving you this land to possess." And if we go to verse 7, "Remember this and never forget how you aroused his anger in the wilderness." God's going to bring you here. Are you going to complain? Or are you going to go in and listen to him and trust that he's going to do what he says he's going to do? Right? This is your special people. Are you going to do that? Are you going to listen, or are you going to turn your backs on him again? And now Moses is going, remember what happened. We already went through this, right? I asked you to do these things and you didn't. You turned your back. You complained. You mumbled. You groaned, right? As a people group. So he's reminding them that they did this. And he said, so I then had to turn to God, and I had to pray to God to save you guys, to remind him of his promise to you, to not build a new people through me, but to continue with you guys and to help you guys grow and learn more and love him more. So if I move on, I'm just going to move on sort of to the end of this, because he's just reminding them that they were rebellious and to not be a rebellious people anymore. And so he said, it's funny, even he was saying that he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights without food and water. And so just thinking of that supernatural idea of he was up there with God. No human can survive that, right? Like that's not something that we can do, but just through all of these books, it's starting to reveal more and more and more of the supernatural things that God does, right? The things that there's normal, and then there's beyond normal, which is what God does. And this is why we can kind of look to him, because he kept Moses safe and protected up there for 40 days and 40 nights without food and water. And then he was so mad, he came down, and he went, if you guys remember, he went to war with some of the people, and the Levites helped kill 3,000 Israelites that day. And then he went back up again and fasted for 40 more days and 40 more nights. No food, no water. So that's supernatural. That's not something he could have done without God. So I'm not recommending that for anybody. And then, so we finish off here. So I just want to finish off with this chapter, because this is, again, the reminder for Moses. Going to the end, it says, God says to him, but they are your people, your inheritance that you brought out by your, Moses is saying, God to God, but they are your people, your inheritance that you brought out by your great power and your outstretched arm. So God, once again, did the work. Remember that he did the work. I know I'm saying it all day today. Remember, 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 remember. This whole book is about remembering. Why? Because we forget. I'm sure if you've read this story before, you probably forgot half of it, right? So we're reading it again to remind ourselves of the power of God. So today, if you're listening to this early in the morning, tomorrow, if you're not, if you're listening to it late at night, remember the things that God has done for you, for people you love, for people you've been praying for, right? So all of these things, remember, that is what leads to us worshiping him as he's meant to be worshiped. If this has been a blessing to you, because I'm done for today. So if this has been a blessing to you, I want you to subscribe to the channel, like it, hit the like button, and share it with other people. That gets this kind of blasted out a little bit more. So the more likes and subscribes I have to the channel, the more people get to hear this, and they get to, hopefully they'll start reading their Bibles. More and more people reading their Bibles, falling in love with God all over again, listening, obeying, and loving other people around him, which is exactly what we want. So I want you to keep reading, and I'll see you next time.